As we welcome Emily. Emily, it's your turn. Here comes Emily. All right. Have fun.
Don't die, and don't do anything stupid. These are the two rules that I set for myself when I decide to embark on a quest to solo through hike the Backbone Trail in only 3 days. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, the Backbone Trail is this serpentine pathway that cuts up and down the spine of the Santa Monica Mountains for about 70 miles before it terminates in the Pacific Palisades. And what drove me to want to hike about 23 miles a day for 3 straight days was a breakup. But not just any breakup. Only 2 months earlier, I had broken up with the man that I desperately wanted to marry. And I was so depressed that I had to force feed myself Soylent just to get enough calories. And I bordered on suicidal. So, rather than extinguish my body completely, I decided to give myself this massive physical quest to prove to myself that I was strong enough to push past this and move forward with my life. And I decided on the Backbone Trail. I woke up at 4 a.m. on the first day and drove myself to the trailhead, groaning as I donned this big 40-pound backpack, feeling more tortoise than athlete. But the trail actually started off awesome until about mile 16 when I lost it for a while and had to scramble through this dense thicket, losing my trekking poles in the process. Then I tried to plug my iPhone into this portable solar charger that I had brought with me to find that it wasn't working. No big deal, I thought to myself, I'll just not play any music or have a GPS or take any photos. I brought a book along with me, so I should be set for entertainment. Day 2, I started off feeling really strong. Until about mile 10, it began to rain. Now, if you're from Los Angeles, you know better than anyone, the Angelinos do not like to venture out when it's wet. They're like gremlins or pillars of salt. This is doubly true if you are on a trail in the middle of nowhere in Malibu. So I went from seeing friendly hikers and mountain bikers every 20 minutes or so to being literally the only person around for miles. I threw this rain fly over my backpack and pushed onward, thinking that I had come too far to turn back now. That night, I set up this really awkward camp on the side of a switchback, and my tent was totally askew, and I'm shivering in these 40-degree temperatures, totally soaked, as I crawl into my tent. And I noticed that as I'm taking off my socks, there's these big, gross white patches of skin falling off my feet. So I rummage around in my pack to try to find something, anything dry to put on. Except my clothes aren't dry. Actually, nothing in my pack is. Somehow the rain fly that came along with my backpack was not as waterproof as advertised, which meant that my pack and everything in it was a big, soggy mess. Except, somehow, my sleeping bag, which was only damp. So I'm shivering and my teeth are chattering, and I crawl into my sleeping bag totally naked, and I try to read a book to steady my mind. And then my tent light goes out. No big deal, I'm an experienced camper. I brought a headlamp as a backup. And then my headlamp goes out. And did I mention that it was a full moon? So it was 100% pitch black outside. It was in this moment that my stomach leapt into my throat because I realized the gravity of my situation. Even though I had hiked 23 miles that day, I knew that it was time to surrender and retreat. I had seen a road about a mile back that I could probably follow all the way to the PCH and then hitchhike from there, I guess, if I had to get home. So I packed up my camp faster than I ever had, and I skid down the mud-drenched trail in the dark. The moment my feet hit the pavement, I felt like I was on drugs or something. I felt like I could run a marathon if I had to, just to get home. And so as I'm walking on this deserted country road, I noticed that Jaguars and Land Rovers and Teslas and these really fancy cars are passing me left and right. And so I jumped my finger into the air to see if I could catch a ride with someone, only to find that they are actively avoiding eye contact with me. So then I looked down at my body, and I realized that I am completely drenched, covered in mud, and carrying a massive backpack. It occurred to me that I might look quite homeless. And just then up ahead, I see a light, and so I start to run towards it, and soon enough, I find myself face to face with the front door of a 5-star Malibu restaurant called the Saddle Peak Lodge. And by this point, I was ready to barge in there and demand to speak to a manager if that's what it took to charge my iPhone so that I could get home. But thank God I didn't have to do that because The valet who works there is a living saint. He let me warm myself under his heat lamp and charge my iPhone in peace until I could call a friend who would come pick me up. And as we drove home that night, I stared kind of wistfully out the car window, really disappointed in my failure, but also really grateful to have a warm bed and a good friend to drive me to it. And I know now how easy it is to bite off more than you can chew in the outdoors, and how tenuous your safety as a novice often is. I decided to hike the Backbone Trail to get over a breakup, but what I actually started getting over were my own self-destructive tendencies. I still go backpacking, by the way, almost every weekend. But now I like to bring friends along so that at least I can have a voice trailing behind me as I hike, reminding me, don't die, and don't do anything stupid. Thank you.